Welcome to this first episode in a series of episodes on a maritime careers and training podcast. And this is delivered by BMTA, British Maritime Training Assessment. And my name is Owen Davies. I'm the host for these episodes, and these episodes are designed to be informative but also honest. And to give those who are looking to come into the marine industry to diversify their skills or upskill themselves, or to have a career change. Perhaps you're in early education, perhaps you're an FE, perhaps you are looking to change your prospects and become multi-diverse in your trade skills. This podcast is hopefully there for you to gain information and guidance on training opportunities both at seagoing careers and ashore. So hopefully these episodes will speak about a range of different diversities, different avenues you can go down, and we'll bring on us a range of special guests from around the country and different parts of the maritime industry. The maritime industry is the first episode we're going to be talking about today. It is generally just about what the content of these episodes are going to be, and an insight into my career. So, as I said, my name is Owen Davies, and I am one of the partners at British Maritime Training and Assessment. We like to call ourselves BMTA for short. And we set up the business in 2023 with a perspective to change the way the maritime industry training perspectives and community and adult training was being run. We also had the void of endpoint assessment to fill. There was a lack of endpoint assessors around, and myself and my business partner, Richard Broden-Cow, stepped into that role as the marine electrical assessors for both OAL and British Marine. So we predominantly focus on bespoke training courses and collaborating with our partners, Maritime Solent. We also launched the still to be the only marine electrician skills bootcamp in the country at the time of recording. And this was delivered in conjunction with the Solent Growth Partnership. This program is a brilliant example of the work that BMTA tried to do in terms of ensuring that training is both accessible and affordable. It's an intense 62.5-hour course where those who are unemployed or self-employed can in fact get the training for free through funding from the Department of Education. And those who are currently employed by a marine business, again, they can utilize this heavily subsidized training, and SMEs paying a 10% contribution, and large employers paying only a 30% contribution. And this program, it met our goals to provide, as I said, that affordable and accessible training, no matter of the barriers, gender, location, what your background is currently, your skill set. It's an opportunity to join. As long as you have that background, a mechanical background or electrical background or anything like that, the access to the course was there. The only aspects were, in essence, a need to be looking for work in the Solent region, where marine electricians were seen as a huge skills shortage. We grew and we've grown over the years, and we're very, very proud to say that we are finalists in this year's Maritime Solent Awards, the 2025 awards, in the categories of Startup of the Year and Future Skills Small Business. And myself, as one of the partners, I work a lot within the marine industry. Primarily, my skill set is around marine engineering and marine electrical disciplinaries, but that is in both shoreside and seagoing career pathways. So a little bit about my career to give you some context and to hopefully provide some validity as to me producing this podcast in conjunction with my partners at BMTA and our special guests. So I was born in Worcestershire, and I was brought up with a separated family. My mother and father, they split when we were quite young, and I grew up And as I grew up, I bounced around between Worcester, Droitwich, Bournemouth, Poole, Dorset, all over the place. So settling into, in terms of education and schools, was quite difficult. And as we went through, my mother brought me up, and I used to see my father on weekends and things like that. So it was always a balance between trying to settle as a family, see my father, and concentrate on education. And I never really truly understood what I wanted to do, but I always knew I was really keen on working with my hands in carpentry, engineering, and being hands-on. And those are the typical sort of traits of an engineer. And eventually we settled in Poole and Dorset, and I was very fortunate enough to be able to make the entry exam for Poole Grammar, one of the grammar schools here in Poole. And this is where I fell in love with design technology, particularly product design. And I always remember my two lecturers who delivered the subject matter there, Mr. Dallimore and Mr. Jackman. They were fantastic. They delivered with so much enthusiasm, so much engagement, and so much passion for the subject that they studied, and themselves teaching. And for all those skill sets, and it left a big stamp on me, a big impression on me in terms of how I wanted to go into the industry and view their passion in my own eyes. During my time at Paul Grammar, that was a big part of what drove me forward. And again, I was encouraged by Mr. Dallimore to apply for the Arkwright Scholarship. And I was fortunate enough that I was awarded that scholarship, one of very few in the school and nationally. And my sponsor would help fund my A-level studies. And in response of that award, I was given the sponsor of Cantford School, which is a private school in Dorset, and it remains there now, a very important part of the Dorset community. And I was invited to go for a visit where I met a gent there, and he introduced me to the opportunity of cadetships, the Merchant Navy. He was an ex-Merchant Navy officer himself, and we got talking about what it looked like, what the pathway was, what the job role looked like, and it really began to excite me. I'd never heard of a cadetship before, never even entertained the idea of going to sea. My thought process was, okay, let's have a look at apprenticeships. I did my work experience with Sunseeker, so I had to look at the engineering side, I had to look at the carpentry side, and that was one of the avenues that I could have a look at. I also went on to did my A-levels at the time, so I also had a vision to have a look at university, and I had a provisional offer to go to the University of Southampton to study marine engineering and naval architecture. And then all of a sudden of this cadetship kept coming back to me. Travel the world, debt-free education, paid while you learn, leave with work experience. And it toyed with me which route to go. And I always personally found that the guidance in terms of maritime and the routes in maritime was hard to find. It wasn't very detailed. It wasn't very transparent. I asked myself, what are all the different options in maritime? What are the courses? What are the pathways? What are the avenues in which you can achieve your goals? What does it look like? What are the progression routes? And that's in part the driving force behind this podcast and sharing the experiences of not just myself, but other personnel within the maritime industry to give a transparent, honest perspective. BMTA was founded much later on, and I wanted to embed into BMTA and this career aspects a lot of the questions and provide the answers for those that I had as a student. So I toyed and froed with different ideas of which way I wanted to do when I was in education, much younger, 16, 17, 18. And then I finally got my A-level results, and I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't meet the entry requirements due to my physics grades not meeting the required grades. And I remember going to my physics teacher at the time and saying, what's happened here? My first choice place at university University of Southampton has been rejected based on my grade. And it transpired that, in fact, what had happened was that the school had forgotten to send one of my grades off to the awarding body. So in a flutter of panic, my physics teacher spoke to the head teacher, Ian Carter, at the time, and he personally phoned the University of Southampton about the issue, and they offered me a place. And it was only then, when I was rejected from Southampton University on this basis, that I realised that actually the opportunity of the cadetship with a local company called Condor Ferries at the time was my preferred route anyway. Subconsciously, I always knew it would because of what it offered. But it took me that opportunity to have something taken away from me, one of the cards off the table, as you were, to make that decision. Financially, it opened up a lot of doors for me. The opportunity to still have student finance, to be able to study, explore the world, and learn a trade with practical skills. It ticked all the boxes that I was after. So I joined as a cadet, as an engineering officer, and I went to the Warsash Maritime School, which was based at Warsash at the time. And I had an absolute brilliant time as a cadet. I enjoyed every bit of it. I got to go to places like Brazil, Rio, Santos, Sao Paulo, Recife. I got to go to America. I got to join vessels such as THV Galatea, one of the Trinity House vessels. And it was a brilliant experience for me. And I went through various stages, meeting plenty of people from different backgrounds, deck officers, engineering officers, ratings, ETO officers, all learning from their experiences and what they had to say. At Warsash Maritime Academy, it really imprinted the key principles on me of punctuality, teamwork, hard work. And these life skills, they're hard to naturally come in life at a young age. But due to the cadetship, you're thrown into the deep end and you very quickly learn to grow up and embrace the experience. I then qualified as an engineering officer and got my Engineering Officer of the Watch certificate, COC, Certificate of Competency from the MCA. And I spent 2 short stints with Marine Scotland on a small vessel called Albanamara before joining Hanson Marine. Again, with Marine Scotland, it was absolutely fascinating. Although a very small vessel, we got to go to dumping sites, we got to go to scallop trawling, and we even at one point found an unidentified object that came aboard. And I still remember the day where the bosun was sat there at the front, chiseling away on the outsides, and the scientists on board said, you might not want to do that. They took a photo and they sent it to the MOD, and they turned around and said, please put the item back in the water. This is potentially a bomb. The colour that dropped out of the bosun's face when he realised what the potential repercussions of what he was doing were. But these things are very rare, but it's just an example of how in the marine industry you get on, and the stories are so impressive and so interesting. As I said, I then joined Hanson Marine for a short period before coming shoreside due to a close family member of mine having a terminal illness. And again, this movement from a seagoing role to a shore-going role was very difficult to find any information. It was difficult to understand which way to go. There was a lack of transparency. And I find it very difficult to articulate to those on shore in certain roles the skill set I had and I built as a marine engineering officer. And I went to an interview at one lifting company in the Dorset area, and I remember them turning around to me and sitting down and saying, it looks like you've got a lot of experience, but what has marine got to do with engineering? What's that got to do with us? And it was one of those moments that sticks with you. I was very frustrated. I was quite upset at the time. And I was sat there thinking to myself, but marine engineers do this, marine engineers do that. We look after electrics, we look after refrigeration, we look after the main engine, we look after electrical distribution. Unfortunately, when you're at sea and things go wrong, you can't just call in a local electrician. You deal with it on board. You're the firefighters on board. You're the medics on board. And all of these things, it stuck with me. How do we demonstrate and celebrate the skill sets we have and the ability we have in the marine industry as trained engineering officers, deck officers, shoreside marine electricians, etc. After that, I joined a company called Ocean Marine Systems at this time, and I did a lot of work on hydraulic rams, deployment thrusters and deployment units, swing thrusters, hydraulic rams, and again built a lot of my skills up. I was very fortunate to work in Parma, fitting and overhauling these systems, Denmark and so forth. And again, meeting a lot of different people in shipyards, which started to really build my confidence and my ability to work with different people, different cultures, and building on those skills that I gained during my cadetship. I then joined a company called Brief Safety, where I took on the role of a production engineer, primarily focused on confined space entry equipment, air trailers, panels, and so forth. This is really where my passion for education started to flourish. I always enjoyed helping other people as a cadet, especially with the academic subjects and things. But during my time at Breathe Safety, I would often go out to places like Le Havre, to oil refineries, and train them on confined space entry and using the equipment. I even went to Mauritania in Africa to a Kinross gold mine, and again, this was to commission and install their new compressor, charging their breathing apparatus, and training them to use the equipment. I then went to Tehran in Iran, and over there, I was again supporting other trades in learning about the breathing apparatus equipment that we were producing and selling in-house, and the relationship between confined space entry and meeting standards and requirements. And at the time, my wife said to me, and she said, you know what, you're going around, you're enjoying all this education, why don't you look at going into FE, teaching at a local college? And I was sat there thinking to myself, I don't want to stand in front of a load of kids and try and impart my knowledge. That's not, they won't want to listen to me. I don't have the knowledge for that. I'm not the right person. But she managed to persuade me, and in October 2018, I took the plunge and I joined Bournemouth and Paul College. I joined as an engineering lecturer, supporting the engineering team and the automotive, and that's where it stemmed my career today. So during my time at Bournemouth and Paul College, I was there for 4.5 years, and after about a year, I transferred over to the Marine Department, and that's where, as a department, we grew it from quite a small cohort, and we implemented various changes, and we helped support the growth of the team in terms of full-time marine engineering and marine electrical courses, apprenticeships, and evenings, as well as the boat building. We implemented the Level 2 SQA Diploma in Maritime Studies and the Level 3 pre-cadetship. And this was a pre-cadetship route that I wanted to drive and give the students awareness of a pathway, to give them options to full-time courses leading on to apprenticeships, HE, and now cadetships. I introduced different companies to the college, such as Just Be Maritime and SSTG, who again were able to come in and impart their knowledge and experience and sell the prospects of cadetships to our learners that they hadn't previously had awareness of. I then became the lead IQA at the Maritime Centre at Bournemouth Paul College, and I also joined British Marine as a technical trainer for the BMTA and MEI, as well as joining the BMEEA, the British Marine Electrical and Electronics Association. One of the big parts of joining the BMEA was, again, started to look at training and impart my voice in terms of our goals of breaking down the barriers of cost, access to training, and trying to build up a national framework to support correct training in the maritime industry. From there, I got the opportunity to apply for a role at Warsash Maritime School. It changed its name to that a few years after leaving. And then I was very fortunate, in June 2023, I joined the Warsash Maritime School, which is part of Southampton Solent University. And while I was there, I was getting interviewed, and a couple of my old colleagues or lecturers were there, Sam Samuels and Toby Bishop. And I remember to this day, Sam said to me, "You've gone full circle here." And I sat there and thought, yeah, it's a bit weird. It's almost like I've come home. And the ethos, the passion, the attitudes, and the attributes that were instilled on me when I was a cadet had all come back. And I realized that at that point, I wanted to impart that passion, those characteristics, those attributes onto learners. I completed my bachelor's top-up degree while working full-time at Warsash Maritime School. And again, I hope that demonstrates that it doesn't matter how old you are, education is there and you can take the plunge, take the opportunity. I completed that in 2024, doing it alongside my job, as I said. And then I made the daft idea at the time of starting my master's. And I say daft because I told my wife that the bachelor's was going to be the last one I did, and then someone dangled the carrot, and I thought, why not? During my time at Warsash, I also integrated the use of 3D modeling software into the teaching practices and on the online software, so then we could bring in mechanical equipment such as engines, purifiers, etc., into a classroom environment without the storage. This 3D software is really useful for explaining techniques, explaining principles, where we can put them into an explosive view, we can do cross sections, we can ask quizzes and all sorts of things like that. And it became a real game changer in how we delivered mechanical principles, mechanical systems, and mechanical operations. And then through this time, BMTA continued to grow. From when we started it in 2023, we picked up the endpoint assessment, we started doing bespoke courses, and we kept on doing the private side alongside my degree and working full-time at the university. And that's when we were approached by Maritime Solent, Lorna. Through the support of Keith Longman at Berth and Boats, we were made aware of the opportunity to put our hats in the ring for the creation and delivery of the Marine Electrical Skills Bootcamp. With industry partners at a round table, we were able to support an agenda in finding out what industry wanted, what industry needed, but delivered and designed in such a way that students can come on the program and have fit-for-purpose training at minimal costs. We implemented a flexible hours hybrid delivery where the theory was delivered on Mondays and Thursdays and continues to be delivered on Mondays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we do hands-on practicals on 3 Saturdays over the 10-week course. We wanted to break down the barriers of I can't afford the training, or I don't have time to attend that training, or I can't afford to take off time of work, by starting to look at delivery methods that allowed it to work around people's busy lives. We're now into the second year and of the boot camp, and again we're going from strength to strength. And in my second year at the Warsash Maritime School, I was again very fortunate enough to be promoted to one of the senior lecturers, where again I could impart more of my knowledge, my passions, and so forth. I've also had a big part in supporting the cadet modernisation. We were able to rearrange the programme to meet a lot of the needs and complaints that cadets previously had. Things such as H&D, cadets not being able to access funding, or short period causing accommodation issues. And we listened, we took those feedback from those cadets, and we changed the way the cadet programme is delivered in order to support them in a more smooth transition and removing some of those stumbling blocks. So I hope that gives you an idea of who I am, why perhaps I have the audacity to start a podcast like this, and hopefully I've given you some demonstration of perhaps some of the credibility that I have to put this together. And I'll be working with a range of different experts from different avenues and different areas who, again, hopefully they can impart their passions and their views on the maritime industry in an honest and balanced manner. So throughout these podcasts, you're going to hear from me. We're going to talk about varying different topics, but I'm always going to try to bring in some special guests who are going to talk about these aspects with me, so that it's not just my voice you're hearing. So some of the upcoming episodes, we're going to be looking at charting the course, so a pathway of both seagoing careers and shoreside. And we're going to bring in a special guest, Sam Samuels, and we'll be discussing and talking about different career paths. We'll also be looking at education pathways and options that are available at all aspects: skills boot camps, full-time courses, cadetships, and higher education. We'll also be bringing some apprentices on and reflecting from an apprentice's view what being an apprentice is like, what the opportunities are, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, what the difficulties are. We'll chat about their experience, how they went about getting an apprenticeship, what are they worried about, what are they happy about, and what the future looks like. And we'll be talking in 3 key disciplines: marine engineer, marine electrician, and boat building. We're also going to have some episodes on what we're calling the cadet diary. So we'll be speaking to current cadets about their experiences of their applications, the process, academics, the colleges, universities available, sponsoring companies, and having open and honest conversations about their time at sea and during their studies. And within that, we'll be talking to engineering cadets, electrotechnical cadets, and the deck cadets. We'll also be looking at women at sea and discussing the challenges and tackling the potential false pretenses. We'll discuss with deck and engineering officer who are currently completed their cadetship and serving at sea, and the challenges they have as women at sea. But also we want to talk to them about how we can empower other women to get into the industry, how to start to close that gender gap and make that gender gap smaller, and empowering that ethos that gender isn't a barrier, and that in fact we all bring special skills, special insights to what we do. But over the series we'll continue to discuss these issues and break down that stigma. We'll also have a look at different aspects such as learning difficulties, financial barriers, and episodes coming up on endpoint assessment, giving a large overview of all different aspects of maritime, not just cadetships, not just apprenticeships, but all the options. There's lots of stuff coming up, and I really hope it will be really informative, and we encourage you to share it with your peers, with schools, with anyone who you think might be interested. Adult learners, the lot. We really hope this podcast and the series of episodes will be something to be shared, and we hope it really does change your perspectives and give you an informative review of the industry. And if anyone does have specific episodes that they'd like to discuss or they'd like us to talk about, please feel free to email in to info@bmta.net. That's info@bmta.net with your ideas, your thoughts, your questions, and we'll do our best to discuss them on these episodes to give some insight and clarify any issues. And that leaves me with one more thing that we'd like to discuss, and that is part of this podcast. Again, we want to reach out and improve accessibility, affordability of maritime training to all people of any background. And a big part of that is we want to support a charity. So on our website, please go to the bottom of the podcast page and you will see our charity of the year. Please do give a donation of any size or anything that you'd be interested in donating to support that charity. That charity is the Charity of the Year of Maritime Solent, and we are the partners, Launchpad partners at the time of this recording with Maritime Solent. So we want to share in supporting the Charity of the Year of that membership group. And again, if you've enjoyed this, you feel like you want to give back and improve to the accessibility options with any of our courses, such as our free employability course, which is available, our free personal development course, and our free health and well-being courses, again, please do make a contribution so then we can give back to others within the area that may not be as fortunate, or other charities that need our support. So again, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode and it gives you an insight into what my career is like, what my ideas and ethos are like, and hopefully about what's coming up in the future. Thanks very much.